All right, folks, we're going to talk about the Hague Summit in Bogota, Colombia. Now, this segment makes a little bit of due dissidence history. This is the first segment that we're showing you that was produced by the newest member of the team, Gen X Girl, who did the prep for this segment. So, round of applause for Gen X Girl in the chat. You're going to see some of her work on display in this piece. But yes, the Hague Group convenes from across the world to an emergency conference to halt the genocide in Gaza. The Republic of Colombia, as co-chair of the Hague Group, will host an emergency ministerial meeting on Palestine at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Bogota on the July 15th to 16th, 2025. The emergency meeting has been convened in response to Israel's ongoing and escalating violations of international law in the occupied Palestinian territory, including the crime of genocide, and will focus on coordinated legal and diplomatic measures to bring them to an end. Convening states from both across and beyond the founding membership of the Hague Group, the emergency meeting will center the legal obligations of states as determined by the advisory opinion of the ICJ of July 2024 to stop all actions that assist the maintenance of the illegal situation created by Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory, and to support the full realization of the Palestinian people's inalienable right to self-determination. In Bogota, states will announce concrete actions to enforce international law through coordinated state action to end the genocide and ensure justice and accountability. So this is the Hague Group Summit. This is a graphic, once again, by Gen X Girl, so thank you for that.
She made that?
Yes, absolutely. So these are the nations that participated: Algeria, Bangladesh, Bolivia, Botswana, Brazil, Chile, China, Cuba, Colombia as co-chair, Djibouti, sorry, I couldn't read that, Honduras, Indonesia, Iraq, Ireland, Lebanon, Libya, Malaysia, Mexico, Namibia, Nicaragua, Norway, Oman, Pakistan, the state of Palestine, of course, Portugal, Qatar, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Senegal, Slovenia, South Africa as co-chair, Spain, Turkey, Uruguay, and Venezuela. This is what I like to call the civilized world. The countries on this list, that's the civilized world. That's the actual first world. So here's a poster for the event, noting some key attendees. Francesca Albanese, of course, Jeremy Corbyn was there as well, Rima Hassan. Also, here is a video that is a little summation that they put out of the event. This was published July 16th at 9 a.m., so we'll get a little trailer cut, if you will, of the proceedings at the inaugural, or at the Hague Summit, rather.
The rise of a new multilateralism, principled, courageous, increasingly led by the global majority. And I'm glad many of these countries are here.
On the 15th of July, in the heart of Bogota, Colombia, 30 states came together, united by a single purpose: to end Israel's impunity and uphold international law.
This conference and others that will follow are ushering the beginning of a new stage in the struggle of the Palestinian people. Our meeting today is a rare demonstration of political courage.
Palestina no está sola. Que esta reunión marque el inicio de una acción conjunta, firme y transformadora.
Imagine if your child was one of the 10 children that was killed queuing for water in Deir el-Balah a few days ago. Would you accept the excuse that it was a technical error?
The occupied Palestinian territory today is a hellscape. In Gaza, Israel has dismantled even the last UN function, humanitarian aid, in order to deliberate, starve, displace time and time again, or kill a population they have marked for elimination.
The impunity continues unabated. We are legally obligated not to condone internationally wrongful acts of the government of Israel.
Throughout the day, state representatives debated concrete collective actions they can take to end the genocide of the Palestinians.
The law is already clear. It's not legal clarity that is lacking, but only courage. There are moments in history that I believe mark a before and after in their wake, And I believe that today's meeting and this conference in Bogota is one such moment.
It's not just about Palestine. This is about all of us. Millions are watching, hoping for leadership that can birth a new global order rooted in justice, humanity, and collective liberation.
There you have it. So obviously an outstanding idea and very well executed by all measures, it seems. In Colombia, the Hague Group charges Israel with genocide. This is a report from Dropsite News. On Tuesday, ministers and officials from over 30 countries, gathered in Bogota, Colombia to convene the Hague Group, an international organization co-chaired by the governments of Colombia and South Africa. The two-day conference will discuss steps forward for the international community to stop Israel's ongoing genocide of Palestinians. The gathering comes amid heightened aggression from the U.S. government against the emergency conference, and one of its lead speakers, Special UN Rapporteur for the West Bank and Gaza, Francesca Albanese, as Israel continues to sabotage negotiations between Israel and Hamas. The Bogota conference will go down as the moment in history that states finally stood up to do the right thing, Albanese had said in the lead up to the conference. She called the formation of the Hague Group the most significant political development of the last 20 months. And here she is talking a little bit about what got her sanctioned by Marco Rubio and the U.S., which is the insistence that states, particularly members of this newly formed Hague Group, band together and apply economic pressure on not only Israel itself, but on each other to divest from Israel in order to try and force an end to their genocidal conduct. So here she is talking about some of that at the conference.
Here is to recommend to you uncompromisingly and dispassionately the cure for the root cause. We are long past the time to deal with the symptoms and the comfort zone of too many these days. And my words will show that what the Hague Group has committed to do and considering expanding upon is the basic commitment to what's just and due based on your obligations under international law. Obligations, not sympathy, not charity. Each state must immediately review and suspend all ties with the state of Israel. Military, strategic, political, diplomatic, economic relations, both imports and exports, and to make sure that their private sectors, insurers, banks, pension funds, universities, and other goods and service providers in the supply chain do the same.
There you go. Like I said, it's that got her sanctioned in the first place. In an official statement to Dropsite, the U.S. State Department said it had strongly opposed the Hague Group's meeting in Colombia. Once again, the civilized world versus the uncivilized world, right? This really exposes that conflict. The United States strongly opposes efforts by so-called multilateral blocs to weaponize international law. Just think of that Orwellian phrase, weaponize international law, as a tool to advance radical anti-Western agendas, a State Department official said. The so-called Hague Group, whose leading voices are South Africa and Cuba, authoritarian and communist regimes, respectively, with deeply troubling human rights records, seeks to undermine the sovereignty of democratic nations by isolating and attempting to delegitimize, I'm assuming that was a typo there, Israel, transparently laying the groundwork for targeting the United States, our military, and our allies. Anel Shalin, a former foreign affairs officer at the State Department who resigned in March 2024, remember we covered that, over the slaughter in Gaza, is attending the week's proceedings in response to the attempt by the U.S. State Department to bully participating countries at the emergency meeting of the Hague Group, she told Dropsite. These are sovereign states who have every right to uphold their obligations as UN members, including under the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. She added, this is not the weaponization of international law. This is, of course, the application of international law. So states announced, this was the result of the meeting, states announced unprecedented measures to halt the Gaza genocide at the Bogota conference, so these were their proclamations. Prevent the provision or transfer of arms, munitions, military fuel, related military equipment, and dual-use items to Israel. Prevent the transit, docking, and servicing of vessels at any port in all cases where there is a clear risk of the vessel being used to carry arms, munitions, military fuel, related military equipment, and dual-use items to Israel. Prevent the carriage of arms, munitions, military fuel, related military equipment, and dual-use items to Israel on vessels bearing our flag, and ensure full accountability, including deflagging for non-compliance with this prohibition. Commence an urgent review of all public contracts to prevent public institutions and funds from supporting Israel's illegal occupation of the Palestinian territory and entrenching its unlawful presence. Comply with obligations to ensure accountability for the most serious crimes under international law through robust, impartial, and independent investigations and prosecutions at national or international levels to ensure justice for all victims and the prevention of future crimes. Support universal jurisdiction mandates as and where applicable in national legal frameworks and judiciaries to ensure justice for victims of international crimes committed in the occupied Palestinian territory. Notice what's not on that list is carpet bombing children and women, right? Notice that these are not like military proclamations. These are legal and diplomatic measures that require international coordination and solidarity, which is why I think that this conference was so important. So Abby Martin was at the conference, and she clipped this piece of video from Gustavo Petro, who is the Colombian president, co-chair of the conference, and hosted it in his country. Of course, we will take a look at some of this. This is the part that was subtitled accurately by our AI subtitler. The rest of it was not, but they got this part.
Y Gaza es simplemente un experimento de los mega ricos tratando de demostrarle a todos los pueblos del mundo cómo se le responde a una rebeldía de la humanidad. Piensan bombardearnos a todos.
Pretty chilling, powerful stuff there. Jeremy Corbyn tweets out, I am proud to be in Bogota, Colombia for the emergency conference to halt the Gaza genocide. This is historic. 32 states are taking concrete action to stand up for the Palestinian people. The spirit of humanity is alive. It's here, and it yearns for justice. So this is obviously a wonderful thing, and it is a completely necessary thing. We've been saying for years now, the world must organize against Israel to be able to essentially form an economic force that can decentivize people from dealing with this state. And that is how Israel will eventually be brought to its knees. They have a Samson option. They have nuclear weapons. You see what they're doing to their neighbors, right? They will lash out violently, right? And so the way to do this, the way to bring the civilized world together, because that is what this is. The countries on this list represent the forces of civilization, as opposed to the forces of barbarism, which are the forces of Israel, the United States, and their Western allies. This is civilization. Yes, exactly. That is exactly what this is. This is very plainly civilization versus barbarism. This is the forces of people who think it is, understand it is their responsibility to organize politically, economically, and diplomatically against a rogue terrorist state who fights their battles by bombing and starving children and families. The lines could not be any more clear, and this makes it all the more clear for the world, and that this is what it's going to take. It's going to take political, economic, and diplomatic pressure, sustained and organized and coordinated, and it's going to require solidarity, and it's going to require discipline. And so God bless everyone there. God bless Colombia and South Africa for putting this together. I do think this is a very significant step, because essentially you need a UN body that has some teeth, right? You need a UN body that is veto-proof from the United States. You need just countries to come together behind certain goals, stick together in pursuit of those goals, and make it happen. And I hope they can. And I think eventually they will. And eventually that list is going to get bigger, and the forces of barbarism are going to get smaller. Because as we'll see in upcoming segments, You can't put someone on like Daniela Weiss on TV and convince the normal people of the world that she is anything but pure evil. And that's why
Yeah.
I think ultimately this is the way. This is the way.
Yeah, we've been anticipating this for a long time, that in the end, the horrors that Israel is committing are just too barbaric for them to be able to use the Holocaust as a shield any longer from responsibility for their actions. They lit that card on fire, and they can no longer use it with normal people, I think. They have remarkably evaporated all of the goodwill and sympathy of the world stemming from the crimes that the Nazis committed. They've been using that for 76 years to keep the world's attention away from the real nature of the state that they formed in the name of the Holocaust, claiming that's the name of the Jews, that they represented all Jewish people, which of course they never did. But in the end, you cannot force people to continue to pretend that there's not a really paradigm destroying hypocrisy in supporting a state like this while claiming to represent human rights and better values than the rest of the world. I think for a lot of us who've grown up in the West, it's really difficult. Like, even if you're on the left, like legitimately on the left, not Democrat left, even if you're on the left, like, yo, man, you've spent your whole life having your brain pickled in that propaganda that the West has values, that the West represents values, and that the world outside the West is less than, that they're barbaric, that they're backwards, that they don't have the same traditions of human rights. They don't have the same traditions of freedom of speech, that they repress their people in ways that in the West you could never get away with. This has just lit all that on fire, man. They just arrested 70 people in England for protesting for Gaza. They made Palestine Action a proscribed terror group for spray painting a plane. You have Richard Medhurst still facing conviction. This whole premise that the West, well, whatever problems we might have, you have rights here you wouldn't have someplace else. Well, that's gone now. You can't make that claim anymore. Look what we've done, not to put it all on England. Look what we're doing here with deporting visa holders, talking about denaturalizing people, all in the interest of defending this settler colonial project. They just adopted the IHRA standards of anti-Semitism, which make basically any kind of speaking out against Israel anti-Semitic. At Columbia, at Harvard, these elite liberal institutions, they fell to their knees at the slightest threat to their grant money. And it's even more disgusting because if any institutions have enough money and investment to weather the loss of federal money, it's them. And rather than to forego that money, they decided to destroy their reputation. So at that point, when you're going to say, well, China, you can't say this, you can't say that, well, I mean, that doesn't really land the way that it did. And this is also, as with so many things, it's a generational fight. If you look at what happened in New York, you look at how young people drove this nomination of Mamdani, you give people the opportunity to express themselves through voting or through purchasing power. The media can do whatever it wants. You can't make people buy shit that they consider toxic because of where it comes from. This is why they're so intent on suppressing the BDS movement, because they know how deadly that is for their cause. And in the end, you can't force people to watch someone like Daniela Weiss and say, well, she's got a point. You can't
Exactly.
force people not to see evil when they're seeing it. It's horrific because literally every single day, more Palestinian people are being killed. And the iceberg of changing this momentum, of changing the narrative, drifts so slowly. There is no doubt in my mind that Israel is finished as a state, whether it's as an apartheid state, whether it's next year or the year after that, there is no doubt in my mind. But how many Palestinians are going to die before we finally see the regime there collapse?
Well, yeah, and that's why, to bring an end to this as quickly as possible, you need to organize things like this as quickly
Yep.
as
Yep.
you possibly can. What Petro said there about this being a rebellion of humanity, right? The
The
rebellion
fact
of
that they've got
humanity.
China and Brazil, that's very good. Those are large economies that will really hurt Israel. That's what's really important.
Yeah, well, the
That's not
rebellion,
just token.
right, right. So the rebellion of humanity is the political and diplomatic and economic struggle against Israel. And yes, the fact that you have China there, when China last fought a war? The 70s. China hasn't fought a war in almost 50 years.
Right.
Almost 50 years.
Right. And it turns out the Dalai Lama's a tongue sucker after all.
Yeah, right, exactly, yes.
He's taking
Almost
pictures
50
with
years.
Shmuley.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what you're looking at, right? That is the contrast. And that's why Petro said, they'll bomb us all because, yeah, the way the West fights is with guns and with bombs and with torture and with starvation and with deprivation. China has not fought a war in my lifetime. How many have we fought? Too many to count. And
We're
so
never
that's the
not
divide.
at war.
Yeah, we're never not at war. That's exactly right.
Please clap.